Welcome. This is Last Friday. We celebrate activists, the groups that they work with, authors, artists, and musicians at the last Friday of every month here in Portland at CTN 5 Studio. Tonight I have John Rensenbrink, whose list of accomplishments is beyond my being able to recite to you now. So what we're going to do is we're going to just launch right into a conversation with him, and then later in the end of the show we're going to open it up to the audience as we do every month. So, John.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming down.
It's a pleasure being here.
Yeah, I have to say you're the first guest that I felt nervous about having, because I feel that some of the things that you've done will be certainly historical in time.
Well, in the face of history,
Yeah.
you need to tremble.
Yeah,
Maybe.
that's right. That's right.
Or try to figure out how not to repeat it.
Yeah. So someone I was describing to someone of the work that you've done, and they mentioned to me, they said, well, so you have this guest coming on who's brought something that was not there before.
Yeah,
So
that's true.
everyone that is here now, including many of like Jill Stein, many of the candidates we have here in Maine, would they?
She mentions that to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would
But
they
of course,
be?
I respond to her and say, well, you really have brought this forward in a manner that I think is just absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
So, and also in terms of bringing something forward and making a difference, you ain't going to do it alone, you know, and nobody does it alone. I know this is sort of what people say when they are in the limelight, and people just, but are honored and so on, and the honoree says, well, I couldn't do it all by myself. And a lot of that is sort of rhetoric. But I think I'm trying to be, in the face of the history of the last, since 1984, when we started this thing out, trying to be, to use an overused word here again, but trying to be humble about it. And to realize that we are all in the river flowing, and we jostle each other. And some of us swim differently than other people swim. In my case, I felt that we really, really needed a change in the power structure of this country. This was back in the 1980s. Of course, it went earlier on in the 1960s. We also talked about that. But what do I mean by that is the fact that what has come to pass, even beyond 1984, what's come to pass is the progressively greater domination of a smaller and smaller number of wealthy and powerful people dominating the politics of the country, and doing it under the guise of being democratic or being Republican. And this has managed, I think, to stave off for them what I feel is the inevitable judgment of history. And so
Yeah.
and I wanted to be part of that judgment.
Yeah, I think that your timing couldn't have been better. It has taken some time for the Green Party to begin to grow and get its roots. And I think the country has come to decide for itself, especially with our two major choices for president, the ones that they essentially force upon us. The whole country is not happy with either choice for the most part.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I feel that the work that you've done has laid the groundwork for bringing up a third party, a third choice.
Yeah, and I think it's very important that we communicate to others and also communicate what is within ourselves as well, that we are not just robots, and that we can make a difference in terms of changing something very powerful and strong. And that has been a very great challenge, I think, for all of us since 1984, especially in developing and creating a new political party. At first, it seemed, I think people said, well, this is nice, you know, it's nice to have another party. But more and more, we began to realize we need not just a party, we need a party of a different kind. One that can, on the one hand, be very effective within the system and at the same time keep very clearly in their heads that they want to transcend that system, or the system needs to be altered as we move along. That combination of temperament, or that combination of idea of holding these two ideas firmly in our mind of the short term and the longer term is so vital to success, especially in terms of political party. You know, it's so amazing that you walk down the street, and this has happened in the last 20, 30 years. You notice how everything becomes green? I mean, even banks are green. Even everything is go green.
Right.
And yet there's one area we do not wish to, certainly demonstrated by the absence of Jill in the debates, we don't really go green in politics.
Right. Where it counts.
And
probably
that's
the
really interesting. You have to think about the fact that there's one realm in our society that very carefully is kept pure from
Right.
being contaminated by something different.
Right.
And that's really interesting. So, of course, once that happens, then you begin to realize, you know, it's like a it's like a novel, a detective novel, where the detective gets to be quite pushy, and he gets a lot of opposition. And for a while there's no opposition, but then there's opposition from certain people, and he begins to realize, aha, I'm touching something, and that's what we're
Nice.
touching. We're touching the inner fear of the 1%, if you want to call them that, or the people who are in control of the system.
Right.
We're touching, we're hitting their fears, and I don't know how long that's going to last. You know, Bernie certainly did punch at it.
Yeah.
And I think Jill now is doing a remarkably wonderful job of getting that sort of, that kind of, what makes a pearl?
Oh, well,
You
was
know-
it time and
Yeah.
pressure? I don't know.
Well, anyway,
But yeah, well,
you know, how is it an oyster that makes a big pearl, or?
yes. Oh, that's what I see what you're saying. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's that sort of thing that's going on. I mean, we're catalysts for showing or for sparking the system or for making that system tremble.
Right.
And they do it to such a degree that they become brutal. So
And it's-
that's a kind of situation, a general situation we're in.
Yeah. It is. It is. And so, one of the things I wanted to ask you tonight is that, let's say you planted the seed of the Green Party, the main Green Party, and Jill Stein is now becoming one of the flowers. But we need to hear from you what you would like to see from the Green Party. What would you like the Green Party to always have as a part of its
I would really like the Green Party to come to terms with what seems to be the inevitable trajectory of groups and parties. I think you put it in something to me today or yesterday. How can friends and allies, how can they avoid
right?
getting mad at each other?
So that's right. So I remember now. I
You know,
was
and that sort of conflict is so embedded,
yeah.
and that sort of trajectory is so embedded in the way in which things work. And I'm absolutely amazed
Right.
that we've done this for 32 years, since 1984, and we're still together.
And still together.
Surely one of the reasons for that is that we all claim the 10 key values. We may have different interpretations of them, but nevertheless, it's been kind of an umbrella for us.
Yeah.
But it hasn't prevented people from realizing that how did you put it?
I said that if the
I-
world is, if you say that the world is painted in charcoal and burnt with smoke,
Right.
that it feels like at times that the Green Party and people within the Green Party are arguing about the shades of green to repaint the walls.
Yep.
So I personally notice, I mean, it's not just the Green Party, it's everybody in the, it's Democrats, I'm sure, and I noticed it in the Occupy movement, that I thought, here's all these people that want to do great things. And then I learned more about the Green Party after the Occupy movement, but the infighting was so intense in the Occupy movement, and the democracy's hard to,
Yeah.
hard to
the
navigate, and but I am astonished that great people, I have to sort of stand on both of their sides that I know in the Portland community and in Maine itself.
You've experienced that in Portland a lot.
Yes, we have, and it's
People who are
distressing
friends and
actually.
allies, and they start to really gripe at each other and get
Yeah.
off of it,
And
on each
would-
other's nerves,
Yeah,
and split. And so that's the thing. The conflict leads to divorce or whatever.
yeah,
And of course, the conflict leading to divorce happens in families.
sure.
It happens in. It even happens in religious communities,
It really happened when Bernie Sanders hit the
and it happens with the Bernie Sanders
That was
thing.
that was the hardest I've seen it.
all
hit,
of this, all these things.
Yeah.
And but then you might say, well, does politics do that? And is politics the problem?
Is it the system?
And,
right?
uh,
Is it
the-
the way that we are?
Yeah. So do we lay the blame to politics? And I have a somewhat different approach to that. I started talking about that with Ben Chipman and Anna Tavarro a while ago.
Who are here?
But the thing is, when something happens in one part of society that causes conflict, for example, in a family, or in a ball club, or in a labor union, or in any variety of segments and
Yeah.
and realms of people, and you realize that what's different about politics, because after all, people get angry at each other in many conflicts outside of politics, right?
Right.
But you said the interesting thing to me about politics is that when something does not get settled in the particular realm, it gets shoved off to a new realm, which is politics. And in politics, it's where the buck stops. And you can't go beyond that unless you resort to arms. So
yeah,
politics becomes our sort of chamber in which what goes on is how far are we going to go with our conflicts here in this chamber so that we don't launch into actual warfare with each other.
Exactly.
I think that's going on in the United States right now.
Yeah, it's really seems to be.
So
getting
politics
close.
needs to be rescued from itself. And that's why the Green Party exists.
That's right. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, though, we'll just take a break, and let's talk about. We have in Maine a third ranked choice voting coming up.
Yep.
And I also want to hear from you on what you'd like to see from millennials and from people that are interested in the Green Party, young people interested in the Green Party.
Well, I think let's go for it.
Okay, we'll come back in just a minute, and thank you so much. We'll be back in just a minute.
Sir, with the white shirt, sit down, please.
Sit down. Sit down.
I also cannot sit.
You can sit down.
Sit down, please.
All right, do me a favor, turn around. Both of you face that direction
what?
right
For
now.
what?
Turn
For
around.
what?
Face that direction.
For
Put
what?
hands on your head.
For what? No, I know my rights. For what?
I'm asking you to do
For
that.
what? What are we
will
being
get to that in a
detained
minute.
for? Answer my question, officer.
No, we're not
I know my
talking.
rights.
Stay there. Cuff him. Hold on, I got it. 5, give us the air for a second. We have one tased. Take him into custody. Just stay right where you are.
Keep an eye on that, please. I don't know if it's delayed.
Okay, slow down. Do it right. There you go.
I want to talk to his boss.
Well, the chief
I
isn't
didn't
here.
do anything, and there are witnesses. Yes.
Hey, look right here. It's all on video, sweetheart.
Okay, so we're back. Thank you, John, for being here. I know that there's going to be people that want to ask questions, so we're going to have to do some quick talking here.
Okay.
I think the first thing was, I know that ranked choice voting is coming up here,
Yes.
and
That's
I
number
couldn't-
5.
I couldn't be happier. And yeah, vote yes on 5.
Yes, on 5.
Yes on 5. I was thinking the other day that this is another byproduct of your work. I think that if the Green Party wasn't here, that people wouldn't be so. And the last couple of elections here in Maine that brought Governor LePage.
Certainly also in Portland.
Yeah.
The Greens in Portland have
Yeah.
had a lot to do with the development of that
Yeah.
alternative voting.
Yeah. So I just think I think it's wonderful. I cannot wait until we have that system in place, and which is not.
It'll be interesting because some people are saying, I know some Greens have said, well, it's not going to make that much difference. I think we have to wait and see how that actually works out, if it passes, which
Yeah.
I think it may. It may pass.
Yeah.
And if so, I think it's a new ball game in many ways.
Yeah.
I think the spoiler effect will be much diminished,
Minimized. Yeah.
and the negative advertising will also probably diminish.
Yeah.
There may be a clearer way forward, not just having a 2-party system, but a 4-party system.
Yes.
All of these things, I think, are somewhat implicit in this vote about ranked choice voting.
Let's touch on that real quick. Is the fact that with ranked choice voting, that the negative negative fighting back and forth will be limited, because if you come across
Exactly.
yeah, you come across negative, you could be the second choice, right?
If you blast, if you are given to, and that's the way the conventional wisdom is now, you blast your opponent because it's just you versus that person.
Yeah.
But you blast that opponent. But supposing that in ranked choice voting, you would like not to blast that opponent
Yeah.
so much, because that opponent of yours may have other people who they like.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And so by doing that, you sort of slay your opportunity
Exactly.
to reach out. In some ways, it probably will help people get more accustomed to compromise. I'm not, in the best sense of the word.
Right.
To be able to think that, okay, my first choice is not going to make it, but my second choice has a chance to do it.
Yeah.
And then, so that from the point of view of the voter, I think the voter is liberated by this. That would be, to me, the biggest advantage, that the voter finally has a chance to be able to assess what her or his choice really is.
That's right.
And becoming more accustomed to that over the years, I think we can gradually move towards maybe even proportional representation. That would be quite a remarkable development. I think Maine has the chance to do that, and the eyes of the nation are upon us.
That's right. There's so many things we could talk about. I'm hoping that some questions will come from the audience that I would love to ask, but I want to give them a chance too. But before we hop to that, I definitely want to see. What would you say to some students that are graduating from high school, students that are just entering college, about the state of about the world that they're about to inherit.
I think the first thing that we have to do is that we have to liberate, to talk about liberation, we have to liberate the students of America. I mean, it's grinding poverty that they face, to tell you the truth. It's an unfair system of loading them up with unbelievable debt. One of the best things that Jill has come forward with is eliminating student debt, just wiping it out. It's a crying shame, not only, but it also is, to me, an indication of something that, like the 1% of the people who rule the country, they just don't understand or they don't care. They are willing to sacrifice the spirit and hopes of generations of young people.
Yeah.
It's incredible how to ruin a country
Right.
by misrule. And that's what we have. And that's why Jill is the only candidate who is really, really serious about doing something about that horrible cancer in our society.
Yeah. Which is kind of the not vulture, sort of the way that capitalism can prey. I don't want to dismiss capitalism necessarily.
I do.
Well, okay, good, fair enough. But it's the way that it is so predatory. That,
Exactly, that's the word.
and-
It's become predatory.
Yeah, it's
Gotcha.
in your
You
lifetime.
use the word gotcha, but I was thinking that capitalism is adept at gotcha.
Oh yeah, gotcha. Did I say it
They
wrong?
communicate that.
Yeah.
They communicate that spirit to lots and lots of people, to play gotcha, and dismiss them. And exclusionary politics. So yeah, we're on the cusp of a great change. Which way that will go, the historical forces are such that we will, if we abide and are loyal to ourselves and look for inclusivity and look for the high ground when also it seems to be so good just to go low. Sometimes you got to go a little low, sometimes. But basically, you need to always seek the high ground. If we pursue that as a message for politics, then I think we have a chance to. Anyway, let's hear some questions.
Hi, my name is Heidi Viertaler. I am a social and environmental justice advocate. So my question is that when I was at the University of Southern Maine, I wrote a paper for my regional geography class about Petra Kelly and the formation of the Green Party in Europe. Are you familiar with that? And I wanted, the thing that was really inspirational for me is the fact that when the Greens took over, they helped to pull back so many of the nuclear power plants offline and really try to create a very aggressive, clean, green energy policy. And I'm wondering what you would like to talk about in terms of the formation of the Maine Green Party and what if you have any kind of a mandate for a clean, green energy economy.
Well, I think you've touched on something really important. And while you were talking, I was thinking of Jill Stein's remarkable pairing of two things that are not often and have not been brought together. And that is jobs on the one hand and dealing with climate change effectively on the other hand. And the way she pulls those two things together is really quite brilliant. That we can do both at the same time. We can have more jobs and we can deal with the climate change. The reason why that's so important because she has the notion of really an all-out effort to create thousands, if not millions, yes, she speaks of millions of jobs by doing what's necessary to avert and improve on climate change. And there's just an abundance of work that needs to be done. and putting people to work together and giving them a vision that this is very important and that this also helps us to avoid the horrors of climate change. I mean, after all, I think this area here in Portland may be underwater in about 50 years.
Yeah.
And I think as people more and more begin to see that that actually can happen, and at the same time, if we can help people visualize that sufficiently enough, and Jill is trying hard to do that.
Yeah.
And that will also, for example, let me mention that offering jobs and enabling jobs, people to have jobs. I talked about student debt. It wouldn't be great if we had student debt eliminated and we were offering all those jobs, the jobs to all those wonderful young people who have wonderful lives in front of them if, for example, we all pull together to help them. I just think that that combination, I see that as a really brilliant way forward. We've also always had the problem that, I want to touch on that, about motivation. Will people be motivated? Well, we need to have assurance that our lives will be better, as well as that we are willing to go to bat for conservation.
Right.
And so we put self-interest, I mean, the really necessary and sensible self-interest of young people. So they eliminate student debt, offer them the opportunity for doing jobs that really make a difference in terms of climate change.
Yeah.
Wow.
My question is how to educate middle class into a class awareness of how we developed, how the system developed, to gain clarity in a strong movement towards systemic change, systematic change about how we view, how we're supposed to be together as human beings. Because right now we're at each other's throat. That's the way it seems to me. So it's like, what's the strategy? What are your thoughts on that is the question. You know, it's like.
That we talked a little bit about how the Green Party, everyone infights to some degree, right? So.
I'm not sure what the question is.
So quickly.
Would you tell me what he wants to know?
I think how can we best go about educating middle class about how we got to where we are, and that there is, privilege in middle class, and yet there's also a powerlessness. And
Exactly. I mean, I've talked to too many people that don't even have an idea, don't have a clue where the 8-hour workday come from and what
You know,
that
the
took.
interesting thing to me about the Occupy movement, because the Occupy movement did do what you're asking for, to some degree. And yet, I think they couched it in ways that the establishment or the powers that be could manipulate or whatever. But what I mean is this. They couched their Occupy movement in terms of the inequality in money and income. That there's a shocking, which is true, unbelievable. But they did not take the next step, which was that the problem is not the inequality of money so much, but it's the inequality of power. And that message has got to come through to a substantial number of Americans within the next 2 or 3 decades. And if that doesn't happen, we're doomed. I'm serious. We've got to become a little more understanding and sophisticated and what's the word? Sharp about the fact that we need a change in the power structure. We need a really substantial change in the way in which power is handled and the way in which power is done and who is in power. Now that's a very heady message in some ways, and I wish that more and more young people could hear that message. We didn't really get that from the political revolution of Bernie Sanders. We did not. Jill is verging on that understanding and doing a good job in many ways, but we need to go further down that line. We need to stop being so damn idealistic about our system. It's not that great. It's got to be changed deeply. And what it means is, well, Ralph Nader used to say, are you he would turn to people and say, are you concerned, or are you really serious? And part of that being really serious is to really become aware that power is at stake. Their power. And I know it's hard for people to get out of that middle class feeling of, oh, well, things are going to be all right. And go to demonstrations and feel good about that, which is true, it's good. And also things are going to be okay, it can't be that bad. And being continually shocked in the last 20 years that it is that bad. Yeah. And yet being hammered by that over and over again in terms of headlines, it's like it's too much. Yeah. We become sort of inured to how bad things are because it's so bad all the time. It's weird, isn't it? Because I think when we started out with the Fate of the Earth with Jonathan Schell about the coming Holocaust of the nuclear powers, how since that time we've become inured to that fact, and somehow or other we put the fact as if it's out there, but we don't really understand what it really means. It's curious. A middle class temperament is very wonderful, but it obviously does not have sufficient depth in terms of understanding of the nature of power.
Right.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks. Actually, before we go, quick couple of questions. What pisses you off?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think Trump used to piss me off. He doesn't anymore.
Yeah.
I think he's a menace, a serious menace.
How about willful ignorance? That's what like willing, like they just, yeah. I want to be ignorant. That's what pisses me off.
Yeah, maybe
about
so.
that.
But of course, we are told that we have to be careful. He might win.
Yeah.
And I think the Democrats are really pushing that he might win.
You know,
And so we have to be on our
whoever
toes.
wins, we still have to fight. If Joe wins, we still have to fight. If it doesn't matter who gets elected, the fight is not over.
That's right.
Yeah.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Jill will not be elected.
Yeah.
But maybe someone like Jill, or maybe Jill herself, could conceivably almost get there in 2020. And by 2024, go all the way.
Right.
That is not impossible.
Right.
Let's remember that. Let's stir ourselves up with that hope and that intention.
Yeah.
And all the things that I've been talking about and we've been talking about converge together to give us that kind of impulse, that kind of will, that kind of energy, that kind of love for the future of our children, future of our grandchildren, the future of our people, and to end the unbelievable history of domination and exploitation in the United States, but also in the countries of the civilizations of the planet.
Yeah.
It's like now we have to go. You know, I don't think I would have gotten into politics the way I have if it hadn't been for the times we live in.
Yeah. Sure.
You know,
You'd made it
and I
necessary.
think that's true for lots and lots of people. But
It's true for me.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you're willing to.
Yeah.
And one last thought about, we talked earlier about conflict and people getting angry at each other.
Yeah.
And they're friends and they're allies and then they split apart.
Yeah.
I think one big thing that might help that, I talked about the 10 key values and hold that up there. That's an umbrella of some sort. But even more important is to really begin to think, you know, instead of these two polar opposites, let's say,
You're right.
think a third.
Third, yeah.
Think to the third way, the third possibility. If you can't You know, if you're a couple and one person wants to go to St. Louis and another person really wants to go to Atlanta, well, you choose to go to St. Petersburg instead.
All right, now I have to hear. I asked you what pissed you off, but before we go, what brings you joy? What's your favorite? What brings you good joy?
What brings me joy?
Yeah, what brings you joy?
I think doing stuff like this.
Yeah. What brings you hope, right? What brings you joy and hope?
I think, to me, yeah. I mean, I can go back to my study and weave all kinds of wonderful possibilities. And that's very important, of course. But in the end, it's taking action.
Yeah.
I think taking action is just, if, for example, you know, you all have that experience as well. You wake up in the morning, or you go to your study, or you go to your office, or whatever, and there are just about 20, 30, 40 different things you're supposed to be doing, and you just feel helpless. You know, you just feel, oh my God, I'm stymied. And however, if you steel yourself to say, oh, wait a minute, I'm going to do one thing, just one thing.
One thing.
And that'll lead to another thing. And then at the end of the day, hey, you know, I've taken action and I feel better. So that's a little bit of homely advice.
Definitely.
to people.
Yeah, you have to try. You can't just not do anything. You definitely want to try and do something. And I think most people are doing something. And
It gets back again to the feeling of power. If you have power within yourself, and responsibility goes with it. Thank you very much.
I have to wrap this up, but I have to tell you before I go is that in the time that I've known John, which is not that long, is when I am in his when I am with him, I feel hope and promise, and it's he's you can already tell from talking with him, he's a great, wonderful, gentle man, and I really am honored that you were here.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
The economists say if you clear cut the forest, take the money and put it in the bank, you can make 6 or 7%. If you clear cut the forest, put it into Malaysia or Papua New Guinea, you can make 30 or 40%. So who cares whether you keep the forest? Cut it down, put the money somewhere else. When those forests are gone, put it in fish. When the fish are gone, put it in computers. Money doesn't stand for anything, and money now grows faster than the real world. Conventional economics is a form of brain damage. Economics is so fundamentally disconnected from the real world, it is destructive. If you take an introductory course in economics, the professor in the first lecture will show a slide of the economy. And it looks very impressive, you know, raw materials, extraction, process, manufacture, wholesale, retail, with arrows going back and forth. And they try to impress you because they think, they know damn well, economics is not a science, but they're trying to fool us into thinking that it's a real science. It's not. Economics is a set of values that they then try to use mathematical equations and all that stuff and pretend that it's a science. But if you ask the economist, in that equation, where do you put the ozone layer? Where do you put the deep underground aquifers of fossil water? Where do you put topsoil or biodiversity? Their answer is, oh, those are externalities. Well, then you might as well be on Mars. That economy is not based in anything like the real world. It's life, the web of life that filters water in the hydrologic cycle. It's microorganisms in the soil that create the soil that we can grow our food in. Nature performs all kinds of services. Insects fertilize all of the flowering plants. These services are vital to the health of the planet. Economists call these externalities. That's nuts.
So, hello, I'm here with Jill Stein again. Thank you so much, Jill, for coming.
Oh, great to be with you, Brian.
To sit down with me it's such a huge honor every time. And
likewise.
We've done it a few,
And yeah, I know we go way back, and you just always, you were always on the money, kind of covering what's happening. So it's really great to be in your universe.
Thank you. That's good. I wasn't expecting that. Okay, so let me knock out some questions.
Sure.
Like I was saying before, I want to ask you a ton of my own questions, but when I told people that I was going to interview you, they're like, you got to ask her this, you got to ask her that. So I'm gonna alter one a little bit. Is
Great.
there's a train leaving Bahrain going 50 miles an hour, and then there's another train leaving Aleppo, and it's going. It doesn't matter how far it's going. Do you know the answer to the question? What is Aleppo?
Yeah, I mean, Aleppo is is a microcosm of this chaos in Syria, where there is an ongoing war, which is a civil war, and which is also compounded by a whole lot of other countries. It's a proxy war, and the people are caught in the crossfire. There is a human rights emergency going on in Aleppo, as there is throughout Syria, where some 9 million refugees, I think, have been displaced, and something like 500,000 people have been killed.
Yeah.
In my view, we need a weapons embargo to Syria and to the Middle East,
Yeah.
and we need a peace process, which has once again it has begun. I think we need to really put the full weight of our country behind this peace process.
You touched on one of my own personal questions, was the embargo. That's, to me, that is one of the most greatest ideas that I was like, why didn't anybody else think of this long ago? So, a weapons embargo is such a great idea. I mean, I don't know how we could pull it off, but I know it can happen, right?
Well,
through
and
legislation.
I'm not sure that it even requires legislation. Can the weapons sales have to be approved by the Department of Secretary of State?
Sure.
So does not the president,
Right.
have authority over this? All of those weapon sales have to be approved. Those weapon sales are largely in violation of U.S. law right now because they're being sold to countries that are violating human rights
Right.
and international law. So I think we already have the force of congressional ruling on this weapons embargo. Kerry and the Russian foreign minister are actually working together now to collaborate against ISIS, but the effective way to collaborate against ISIS is through a weapons embargo. The U.S. can start this. We supply the majority of weapons to actually all sides in the Middle East, whether directly or indirectly.
Wouldn't Russia be a part?
Russia should be a part of this.
It's like we gave them the weapons, put them in the ring. We built the war, whatever. We provided the products, built the war, put them in the ring together, and now we have to come in together to knock them back out.
Russia is paying to the teeth for this conflict as we are. Russia can no more afford the costs of this ongoing endless war on terror than we can.
Right.
Russia is also very much at risk for the continuing fact of terrorist enterprises.
Right.
So Russia has every reason to collaborate with us in an effective way.
Good.
Because dropping bombs and shooting them up only we do them a favor of recruiting more people to their cause, because it's mostly innocent people who are getting killed in the crossfire here.
I can't wait to see the media spin it, because they have been using that propaganda to badmouth Russia for half a year now. I mean, ever since Snowden got asylum. Okay, we got to shift real quickly. Education. A friend of mine that I work with says there's no way that you can do what you want to do without raising everyone's taxes. I argued that we didn't raise taxes to bail out the banks or the auto industry. So can you please explain again? Sorry.
So we came up with the cash to bail out Wall Street.
Right.
The crooks who crashed the economy through their waste, fraud, and abuse.
Right.
And it was $16 trillion that we came up with basically, in the blink of an eye in order to bail out Wall Street.
Right.
So if we came up with all that cash to bail out the crooks, we could come up with a much smaller sum, 1.5 trillion, as opposed to 16 trillion, to bail out the students. And remember, this is the stimulus package of our dreams, because people are already trained up.
Yeah.
They already have their degrees. They already know what to do. They just need to be unleashed from this predatory debt so they can actually take the risks of setting up the small businesses, the worker cooperatives, the nonprofits to create this economy of the future. Without them, we're dead in the water.
You put that money back into the economy rather than it
Exactly.
going into this invisible bank offshore somewhere, whatever it is.
Yes, exactly. So we know that the best way to stimulate the economy
Right.
is by investing in our core productivity. That is, by definition, that is a generation of young people who've basically been thrown under the bus. We need to invest in them. We also know that for every dollar we put into higher education, we get back $7 in return.
Right.
So we get a huge return on our investment rather quickly. We know this from the GI Bill following the Second World War.
Right.
So this is an investment we cannot afford not to make. It's both going forward and it's going backward in order to liberate people. How to come up with 1.5 trillion? So, it's not rocket science. Wall Street right now is the one sector of the economy, the most profitable sector, that does not pay any sales tax whatsoever.
Right.
What's wrong with this picture?
Yeah.
We need to have a small sales tax on Wall Street that could raise hundreds of billions of dollars that can very quickly pay down that student loan debt.
Okay, now I know there's a bunch of people waiting to hear you speak. I know I got to
Okay.
let you go.
All right, great.
One last thing.
Sure.
Don't concede the election if you happen to lose. Right, I don't know, that's just my own personal thing. I might even have to cut that out. But I got to tell you is that I couldn't concede to them. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it is like those people that attacked the Native Americans with the dogs. They weren't real authority.
That's right.
As these two presidential candidates and these two corporate parties, I don't consider them. I personally wouldn't concede to them.
Well, let me say this, if there is a suggestion that there has been tampering with the vote
Yes.
and election fraud, we are not going to roll over.
Yeah.
We're not going to just suck it up. We're going to stand up and we're going to challenge it in court and do what we need to do to ensure that Americans have the vote. But even before the election, let me say, we are not conceding our democracy, and we are calling for a full, inclusive, open debate, and we encourage people to come and join us on the grounds of Hofstra University on September 26th.
Okay.
Join us at what we hope will be the most massive demonstration on behalf of our democracy
Awesome.
in history. 75% of Americans are saying we need to open up the debates. As Americans, we not only have a right to vote, we have a right to know who we can vote for. And we deserve to have an open, full, inclusive debate. There are only 4 candidates on the ballot. This is not about opening up the debate to 20 candidates. This is 4 candidates, 2 of whom have already been rejected by the majority of American voters, who say that these are the most disliked and distrusted presidential candidates in our history. The American people are clamoring for other choices and other voices. They are sick of the rigged economy, and they are sick of the rigged political system that continues to throw them under the bus. So we are standing up with your support to insist that we actually have a real democracy if we are to solve the crises we are facing. In this election, we are not only deciding what kind of a world we will have, but whether or not we will have a world going forward. We are looking at a climate crisis that is melting down on our watch in an absolutely a catastrophic way. We are looking at a crisis of student debt that has imprisoned a generation in endless predatory student loan debt. We're looking at a nuclear arms race, which is hotter than just about any time in our lifetimes, with 2,000 nuclear weapons on hair trigger alert. Hillary Clinton wants to start an air war with a nuclear armed power, Russia, over Syria. We have these endless expanding wars, which are not making us safer. They are making us less safe, and they are blowing back at us with a vengeance. We need to be able to debate the critical issues that we are facing if we are going to be able to fix them. So we say it's time to take back the promise of democracy. Be there with us on September 26th at Hofstra University.
Jill, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Again.
Brian. All best.
Great.
And it starts by rejecting this propaganda of the lesser evil. The lesser evil doesn't solve the crisis. It only paves the way to the greater evil because people stop coming out to vote for lesser evil politicians that are throwing them under the bus. The crisis of Donald Trump and the whole movement of right-wing extremism, this is a product of the neoliberal policies put forward by the Democrats every bit as much as by the Republicans. The real solution to the crisis of right-wing extremism is true progressive policies that we alone are standing for in this race. Hillary Clinton is not going to solve this problem. She was part of what caused it. She will continue to aggravate this problem. We need to stand up for the only real solution. Between the greater and lesser evil, it is a race to the bottom. The politics of fear that tells you gotta vote against your fears instead of what you're for, it has delivered everything we were afraid of. It's time for us to stand up, reject the lesser evil, and fight for the greater good like our lives depend on it, because they do.
All right, so we just saw Jill Stein speak to the USM crowd here, which was a great mixed crowd. And I've got Medea Benjamin with me, who I'm a huge fan of. And you're such a trooper to stick around and come and talk with us.
My pleasure.
Yeah,
Guy with a hat like that, you can talk to him.
Yes, to explain the hat, I'm hoping that one day before I die to be very proud of this flag again. So.
Very nice.
That's why I wear the hat. I'm hoping so. I didn't know who you were for a long time, but I would see these things getting disrupted here, and I used to cheer for you, and I didn't know who you were. And then when finally with the Donald Trump nomination speech, then I learned who you were, and I'm enamored. And I actually have been asking around. Has anyone interrupted a presidential nomination speech? I don't know if anyone has before. You might be the first, so I'll have to ask around. Maybe something in the 60s.
Well, I did interrupt President Bush when he made his speech. Yeah.
Oh, see, right. So then it would have been you anyway. So you've been doing it for a long time. Yeah. Oh my God. So
I did not interrupt Obama. I was actually in the audience, and I was actually happy he was elected, and I thought, I'm going to sit this one out and hope that he's going to be good.
Right. So Medea, we don't want to stretch out it's late, but are you from the East Coast? Where are you
Washington,
from?
D.C.
Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And how long do you think you've been in activism, or how long? What did it take? What was the breaking point?
Very simple. I was a high schooler during the Vietnam War.
Yeah.
And I saw my friends getting shipped off to a place we didn't even know about, nor did we know why they were going.
Right.
And we knew we were killing a lot of people and they were being killed, and it was just wrong. Wow. So I've been a peace activist ever since. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
It's over 40 years.
It's the end of the Vietnam War. I was surprised. So you and Jill, wow, you look great. So, so you've been doing it all your life, all your adult life. Well, no wonder you're where you are now. But I just think it's so great. I was imagining what it would take to walk into a Donald Trump thing with a banner by yourself. Or are you by yourself? I'm telling you, that is guts. I don't even know if I could go in there and not do anything. You know what I mean? I don't know if I could just be there as a person. It would be very terrifying.
Well, the only really terrifying thing is that you're really worried about the people around you. Because there's a lot of crazy fanatic people,
That's
and
what I mean.
they he eggs them on, and then they punch you and that kind of thing. And I've got beaten up a couple of times, so you could tell I'm not real big or real strong. So it is sometimes worrisome. And in the Republican convention, I was in the media area and actually stood on the table, and I looked down and I thought, if somebody pushes me, I can just go straight down.
Oh my God.
But I thought, all right, I got to do it.
Yeah. Oh my God, it's so wonderful. So, so a lot of people, I don't think a lot of people know who you are, but a lot of people have seen what you've done, and I know that a lot of people agree. Especially some of the people that would tune into my show here. We're really happy to see you here talking with us, and just doing the tour in Maine. We're so happy to have you both. And what's next?
Well, first let me say what my tour is, because I've been going around with this new book, and it's a book on Saudi Arabia. And I realized that even within the progressive movement, people don't know about Saudi Arabia. We've allowed our government to be in bed with this abusive, horrible, intolerant, misogynist regime, and been selling them over $100 billion of weapons. And I suddenly woke up and said, this can't go on.
Right.
And how can we pretend we're fighting terrorism when we're the buddies with the biggest terrorist state there is in the world?
Yeah.
So I wrote the book to be like a primer, a 101 kind of thing. What is Saudi Arabia like? Why is it such a bad ally for the United States? And what can we do about it? And then using it as a tool to go around the country. And my main goal is to build a movement to stop weapons sales to Saudi Arabia. And it's a really great time to be doing that, because Saudi Arabia is using those weapons now to destroy an already impoverished country of Yemen. And suddenly some members of Congress started standing up and saying, wait, why are we doing this? Maybe we should think twice about it. Right. So I tell people, now is the time. Contact your congressperson, say no more weapons sales to Saudi Arabia.
Nice.
Could you say that?
No more weapon sales to Saudi Arabia.
That's right. We mean
Not
that.
again. Are you going to go to, will you be at Hofstra?
I'm going to go to Hofstra, where the presidential debate is happening. Really going there because I think it's horrible that both Jill Stein and Gary Johnson from the Libertarian Party are not included in the debates. The American people deserve to hear a broad spectrum of candidates, and so I will be there to support Jill.
So, will you be in Hofstra?
I will be in Hofstra, where the presidential debates are happening, because I think it's so horrendous that they are excluding Jill Stein and Gary Johnson from the Libertarian Party, and the Americans deserve a real debate hearing all four of those candidates. So yes, I will be there.
Good deal. I'm sorry, I almost forgot about you. I did forget about you. Thank you for bringing it up. I don't know, like this show doesn't get edited for a little while, but so you'll be long gone from Maine, I think, by the time we get it out. But I'm so glad you came up, and I hope you come up another time. I don't know when we'll see you, but you're still in D.C. area?
I'm still in D.C. area, and I'm sure I will be visiting your beautiful state sometime in the near future.
Thank you so much, Medea.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, man. Yeah.
These memories undoubtedly will fade away and be replaced, but